they laughed at her. Not just the kids in the back row, but even the ones who pretended to be her friends. Emily, the only black girl in a mostly white classroom, felt the sting every time. Stop lying, Emily. Girls can't be Navy SEALs, and definitely not your mom. The words weren't shouted. They were hissed, whispered, repeated until they carved themselves into her skin like scratches no one else could see. Jason smirked, others rolled their eyes, and the rest pretended not to notice. Emily gripped her pencil so hard it left half-moon marks in her palm. She wasn't lying, not once. Her mother, Commander Rachel Carter, was one of the rare women who had endured the brutal gauntlet of training and earned the Golden Trident. But in this classroom, truth carried no weight. In this classroom, Emily's skin, her gender, her difference, made her invisible. Or worse, unbelievable. Even the adults didn't help. Mr. Dawson, their history teacher, once chuckled when the subject came up. "Emily, there's no need to make up stories. Just be yourself," he said like he was offering kindness. But the smile in his eyes carried pity, not belief. That cut deeper than Jason's mockery ever could. Emily sat straighter, blinking fast, swallowing hard. Her thoughts were short, sharp, jagged. "I'm not lying. She's real. She's mine. Why won't anyone believe me?" The bell rang, books slammed shut, chairs scraped, another day of whispers, another walk through the hall with her head down, carrying the weight of everyone's disbelief like a backpack heavier than her own. At home, things looked different, almost fragile, like stolen time. Rachel was rarely there. Missions swallowed weeks, sometimes months, but when she was home, she made every moment count. She cooked Emily's favorite pasta, teased her about her messy braids, tucked her in with soft reminders. "You're stronger than their doubts, baby," she'd whisper. "Never let anyone shrink your truth." Emily nodded, smiling for her mother's sake. But the truth was harder. She never told Rachel about the names, the whispers, the way even grown-ups rolled their eyes. Why weigh down their fleeting days together with her own loneliness? So she carried it alone. Every cruel laugh replayed when she tried to sleep, every word liar echoing until her chest ached. And then came Tuesday. The day began like any other. Fluorescent hum above the desks, chalk dust in the air, Mr. Dawson droning about timelines and treaties. Emily sat at her corner desk, doodling tridents in the margin of her notebook, trying not to listen to the snickers 2 rows over. That's when it happened. A sound that didn't belong. Low, distant, steady. The faint thrum of helicopter blades rattled the windows. Heads lifted. Whispers spread. Jason cracked a joke about a drill. But Emily froze, her pencil hovering above the page. She knew that sound. She had heard it before, at night when her mom was preparing to leave. Her pulse quickened. Outside the glass, shadows stretched across the schoolyard. Not just any shadows, organized, deliberate. Convoy lights flickered through the blinds. Something was coming. And deep inside, Emily knew. By the end of this day, no one would dare call her a liar again. The house smelled of butter and maple syrup, a scent so rare it almost felt like a dream. Emily blinked awake to the sound of something sizzling in the pan. For a moment, she thought she was imagining it, until her mother's voice floated down the hall. "Breakfast, soldier. Up and at 'em." Emily smiled before she could stop herself. Mornings like this were treasures. Most days, Rachel was halfway across the world, doing things Emily couldn't imagine and wasn't allowed to know. But when she was home, she made it count. Emily padded into the kitchen, still in her pajamas, rubbing her eyes. Rachel stood at the stove, broad shoulders framed by sunlight streaming through the blinds. Her hair was tied back, sleeves rolled, the kind of casual domesticity that almost made you forget the steel edge beneath. On the table sat a plate of golden pancakes already waiting, butter melting into soft rivers. Beside them, half forgotten, lay a small leather case. The lid was open just enough for something metallic to catch the light, a glint of gold and steel. Emily didn't notice. She was too busy drowning her plate in syrup. Rachel turned, spatula in hand, eyes softening at the sight of her daughter's sleepy grin. "Eat up. Big day ahead." Emily rolled her eyes playfully. "Every day is a big day, according to you." Rachel chuckled, but her gaze flickered toward the case on the table. She closed it gently, sliding it aside with the kind of care people use when handling live explosives. The night before, Rachel had crept into Emily's room to check on her. She hadn't meant to linger, but she froze when she heard her daughter whispering in her sleep. "They say I'm lying. Mom's not real. They don't believe me." The words cut deeper than any battlefield wound. Rachel stood there, fists curling against the doorframe, feeling a rage she hadn't felt in years. Not at Emily, but at a world so small-minded it would tear down a child's pride to feed its own prejudice. That's when she knew. It wasn't enough to tell Emily she was strong. It was time to show the world. Now, as Emily chewed pancakes, Rachel moved to the counter where the leather case sat. She opened it fully this time. Inside lay her Navy insignia, the golden trident pin, polished to a dull glow, and a challenge coin etched with battle scars. She picked them up one by one, running her thumb across their surfaces, as if reminding herself of everything she had endured to earn them. Cold metal, but alive with memory. Emily looked up briefly. "What's that?" Rachel slipped the pin back into the case before her daughter could see clearly. "Just old work, stuff." Emily shrugged, returning to her plate. She didn't question it. To her, work was all her mom ever called it. Classified meant closed doors and answers that never came. Rachel watched her daughter for a long moment, memorizing the curve of her small shoulders, the way she slouched when she ate. She hated how young she still looked, how vulnerable the world insisted on making her. Rachel glanced at the clock. 7:45. The second hand ticked louder than it should have. A decision pressed against her chest like weight on a diver's lungs. She closed the case, snapped it shut, and slid it into her duffel. Then she stood tall, shoulders squaring, eyes cold with resolve. Enough whispers, enough doubt. Today would be different. Rachel strapped on her watch, checked the time once more, and under her breath, barely audible, said the words that would change everything. Today, the truth will stand. The Tuesday afternoon was supposed to be as ordinary as chalk dust. Fluorescent lights buzzed faintly overhead, the sound blending with Mr. Dawson's monotone lecture about treaties and timelines. Emily sat hunched in her corner desk, pencil drifting across the margin of her notebook, sketching small tridents as if the shape itself gave her strength. Jason's whisper cut through the droning lesson. "Still telling people your mom's a SEAL?" He smirked. "Sure, Emily. Maybe next week she'll be president, too." The boys around him chuckled. Emily didn't answer. She had learned silence was safer, but inside her chest ached with the same old question. What will it take for them to believe me? That's when the sound came. Low at first, like a pulse at the edge of hearing. The steady thrum of rotor blades grew louder, rattling the thin classroom windows until the blinds trembled. Students looked up, puzzled. Someone laughed nervously. Mr. Dawson frowned, chalk pausing mid-sentence. "Probably just a drill at the base," he muttered, but his voice didn't carry conviction. The sound intensified. Books quivered on desks. Outside the glass, the faint gleam of headlights swept across the yard. Convoy vehicles, lined and deliberate. Jason leaned forward, wide-eyed. "What the—" And then the door opened. Not a polite knock, not a teacher late to class. The door swung open with a force that silenced every whisper. Figures stepped inside. Not actors, not mall security. Navy SEALs, boots steady, posture firm, presence filling the small space. Their helmets were on, their vests heavy, but their weapons were slung and secured, pointed nowhere. Every move spoke of discipline, not threat. The classroom went dead silent. Chairs scraped as a few students instinctively ducked under their desks. Others froze, mouths open. Emily's heart slammed in her chest. She recognized the insignia on their uniforms. She recognized the rhythm of their march, the stillness in their stance. This wasn't theater. This was real. And then, through the line of armored bodies, came her. Rachel Carter. Helmet tucked under one arm, dark hair tumbling free onto her shoulders. Her eyes swept the room with the quiet authority of someone who had commanded storms and survived them. She didn't need to raise her voice. She didn't need to prove herself. Her presence alone was proof. Every gaze in the room followed her. Every disbelief crumbled in silence. Rachel's eyes locked on Emily. And for the first time in her life, Emily saw her mother not just as mom, but as the warrior she had always known her to be. The silence broke in a whisper. Jason, the loudest doubter, the one who had mocked her most, leaned toward his deskmate and muttered, "Oh my God." She wasn't lying. Heat surged into Emily's face. Not shame this time. Not anger. Something sharper. Something cleaner. Vindication. Rachel stepped closer, boots echoing against the tiles. The air felt electric, as if the whole building held its breath. She stopped at Emily's desk, helmet under her arm, posture unyielding, but her eyes warm. "Emily," she said, her voice steady, firm enough to shake the air yet soft enough to cradle her daughter's name. "Pack your things. We need to go." The words sliced through the silence. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then Emily rose slowly, her backpack heavy on her shoulder, her legs trembling but her chin lifted. Every eye in the classroom followed her as she crossed the room. For once, she didn't feel small. She didn't feel invisible. She felt exactly what she was, the daughter of Commander Rachel Carter, a truth no one could deny again. For a moment, the classroom felt like a photograph, every detail frozen in stunned silence. Mr. Dawson stood stiff near the chalkboard, chalk still in his hand. Jason's smirk had collapsed into slack-jawed disbelief. A dozen pairs of eyes flicked between Emily and the imposing figure standing at her side. Rachel Carter's gaze swept across the room, calm but unyielding, her presence commanding without needing volume. She didn't flinch at the shock on their faces, didn't soften for the discomfort in their silence. She looked at them the way only someone forged in fire could look, measured, precise, unwavering. Then she spoke. Never doubt a warrior just because she doesn't fit your idea of one. Her voice was steady, every word striking the air like a gavel. She didn't shout. She didn't need to. The stillness in the room made her statement echo louder than any scream. The words sank deep. Even Jason, who had taunted Emily for months, lowered his gaze to his desk. No one laughed. No one dared. Emily rose from her seat, the straps of her backpack creaking as she pulled them onto her shoulders. Her legs trembled, but her head was high, her chin firm. For the first time, the laughter wasn't heavier than her footsteps. It was gone. What remained was silence, the kind that carried weight. She walked across the aisle, every step measured, the eyes of her classmates burning into her back. But this time, the stairs didn't make her feel small. They made her taller. Rachel waited at the doorway, helmet still tucked under her arm. When Emily reached her, Rachel placed a hand firmly on her daughter's shoulder, not just protective, but grounding, like passing strength from one body to another. Together, they stepped into the corridor. The Navy SEAL team shifted seamlessly into formation, their boots thudding softly against the linoleum. Yet, for Emily, the loudest sound was her mother's steady breathing at her side. As they walked, Rachel leaned closer, her voice low enough for only Emily to hear. "I won't always be here to defend you," she said, her tone firm but warm. "But your truth never needs defense. It stands on its own." Emily swallowed hard, the words pressing against the walls of her chest, filling the spaces where doubt used to live. She nodded, gripping the strap of her backpack tighter, as if anchoring the moment into herself. Behind them, the corridor stretched quiet and still. Students had begun peeking out from half-open classroom doors, eyes wide, whispers chasing them like shadows. But no one dared speak out loud, not after what they had seen. Rachel kept her gaze forward, stride purposeful, every step echoing with certainty. Emily matched her pace, smaller strides but equal rhythm, as if walking into a new version of herself. Then it came, the sharp clang of the school bell ringing behind them. A sound meant to signal routine. Next period, another class. The same old rhythm of ordinary days. But in that moment, it didn't sound ordinary. It sounded hollow, a reminder that nothing inside that classroom would ever be the same again. The bell echoed down the hall, chasing after them, colliding with the silence they left in their wake. Emily didn't look back. She didn't need to, because in the span of minutes, the story that had once branded her a liar had become untouchable truth. And for the first time, she carried that truth like armor. By the next morning, the school didn't feel the same. The fluorescent lights buzzed as always, the halls smelled faintly of pencil shavings and floor wax, but something in the air had shifted. Students who once whispered behind Emily's back now fell silent when she passed. Heads tilted, eyes lingered, not with mockery this time, but with something closer to awe, or maybe guilt. The same mouths that once spat the word liar now stumbled over silence. Emily walked through the halls without rushing, her steps steady, shoulders straight. She wasn't pretending confidence anymore. She wore it like a second skin. In history class, Jason, who had been the loudest doubter, kept glancing at her desk. For once, his smirk was gone. His pen tapped nervously against his notebook until, finally, he leaned forward. "Hey, his voice cracked. "I was wrong." Emily looked up slowly. For a second, the memory of every cruel laugh flashed through her. She could have gloated. She could have cut him down with the same sharpness he had once used on her. Instead, she simply met his eyes, calm and unwavering. "I know," she said. Nothing more. Jason swallowed hard, nodding quickly, relief flickering across his face. The power wasn't in proving him wrong anymore. It was in not needing to. Later, between classes, Mr. Dawson caught her near the door. He adjusted his glasses, his usual authority softened. "Emily," he began, his tone quieter than she'd ever heard it. "About what I said, about making up stories." He paused, the words dragging like stones. "I underestimated you. I underestimated your mother, and for that, I owe you an apology." Emily studied him for a moment, then gave a small nod. "Thank you, Mr. Dawson." He seemed almost startled by her simplicity, as if he had expected anger or sarcasm. But Emily had nothing to prove. His words weren't her fuel anymore. Her own truth was. At recess, she sat alone under the shade of a tree, watching the chatter of the playground unfold. The noise felt distant, almost muted, as if she existed in a different frequency now. She reached into her backpack and pulled out something small, Rachel's trident patch. It wasn't flashy, just fabric and thread, but to Emily it glowed brighter than gold. She ran her thumb over its edges, tracing the stitches, feeling the weight of every battle her mother had fought to earn it. This wasn't just proof, it was inheritance. For a long time she held it in her palm, letting the sun warm the patch. In its reflection she saw herself not as the girl who had been mocked, but as the daughter of a warrior. Blood of resilience, spirit of strength. The bell rang again, jolting the playground back into rhythm. Students streamed past her, some stealing curious glances, others daring small smiles. A few even seemed to want to sit beside her, to ask questions, to belong in the orbit of truth they had once denied. Emily stood, slipping the patch carefully back into her bag. She didn't need their approval, and she didn't crave their company. The only thing she carried was herself, and that was finally enough. Back in class, she settled into her usual desk. The whispers had stopped, the laughter replaced with heavy quiet, but her eyes drifted to the empty chair at the front of the room. Her mother's seat, not a literal one, but the absence hung heavy all the same. Rachel was gone again, called back to missions, to shadows Emily couldn't follow. The pride in her chest tightened into something bittersweet. Strength and loneliness tangled together, reminding her that even victories could ache. Emily exhaled slowly, steadying herself. She touched her backpack where the patch rested. She'll be back, and until then, I'll carry the truth myself. The next morning, the halls no longer felt hostile. Emily stepped through the doors of the school, building, backpack slung over her shoulder, and for the first time she didn't wonder who might laugh, whisper, or roll their eyes. The weight of that fear had fallen away. She moved down the corridor with quiet assurance. Students glanced up, ready to start the same old game of smirks and whispers, but none came. Silence held, not heavy or cruel, but respectful. The very sound of their hesitation was proof enough. Things had changed. In her mind, her mother's voice replayed, steady and grounding. Strength isn't about making others small. It's about standing tall without needing to prove anything. Emily carried those words like armor. In history class, Mr. Dawson began his lecture, but this time his tone was softer, less dismissive. When he asked a question about post-war treaties, the room fell into the usual shuffle of eyes avoiding his gaze. Emily raised her hand. Her voice was calm, measured, carrying a quiet certainty. The failure wasn't just political, it was about trust. Without trust, no agreement lasts. The words weren't loud, but they landed like stones across still water. Dawson blinked, surprised, then nodded slowly. That's exactly right. No laughter followed, no snickers, just silence, the kind that carried respect. Emily lowered her hand, heart steady. She hadn't spoken to prove herself. She had spoken because she no longer needed to hide. When the bell rang, she gathered her things at her own pace. No rush, no escape. She walked through the corridor where sunlight streamed through the high windows, painting golden lines across the floor. Her fingers brushed the edge of her backpack where the trident patch rested inside. The fabric was warm against her palm, a quiet reminder of her mother's legacy, but more importantly, of her own. Emily didn't need anyone's approval to know who she was anymore. She didn't need to fight to be believed. She had believed herself, and that was enough. As she stepped into the light, the world around her seemed less intimidating, less cruel. She wasn't invisible. She wasn't a liar. She was Emily Carter, the daughter of a warrior and a warrior in her own right. The question lingered in the silence she left behind, a challenge to anyone who had doubted. Would you have believed her, or doubted her too?